Hello and welcome to Stretford Paddock. My name is Joe and this is the news for Tuesday, what are we on? The 16th of August. We're looking at a few different things. We will be coming to that first of all, but the main story today is about Cunha from Atletico Madrid. Manchester United reportedly having deep talks, close to an agreement with Atletico Madrid, according to multiple different sources. A bid or a deal around 50 million is what they are approaching. We'll come to that in just a minute, but as you can see here, we'll start with Cristiano Ronaldo. We've got loads of stories to get through today. There's an update on Jong coming as well, and Ronaldo and Fernandez appealing to the board for more signings, which is interesting because one of those transfers may well be Ronaldo leaving. So, you know, he might have talked himself into that one there. But again, we're live, so get your comments in, hit the like button, and we're going through your comments and your thoughts on Matthias Cunha in just a few minutes. But let's start with Cristiano Ronaldo. This is breaking this morning. Simon Stone sort of echoing, but with a slightly firmer hand, some of the stories we saw last night. Obviously, Simon Stone from the BBC, kind of, once he said it, it means that usually the slightly less reputable journalists have already said it, and he comes in and almost confirms it. And he has said that Manchester United could let Cristiano Ronaldo leave this summer window amid concerns about how the striker's mood is affecting morale in the camp. Apparently, all summer we've had this line of "he's not for sale." We've heard that. We've heard him talk. We've heard Ten Hag say that publicly. We've heard, rumours and reports that that's what's being said in private as well. He's not going anywhere. He's part of the plans for next season. However, senior figures have been alarmed at how quickly the overwhelmingly positive feelings around the camp have generated, or I assume that's meant to say degenerated, after a successful pre-season tour to Thailand and Australia have disappeared. The Portuguese has a year left on his contract that he returned from Juventus 12 months ago. We know all that. The Portuguese is said to be a negative presence at the club, hardly communicates with his teammates in the canteen, and has made no secret of his desire to move away. Sources have told the BBC that they fear there will be no change in United's current issues until Ronaldo is gone, and there is a belief amongst some that even if the forward left and there was no replacement, the general uplift would trigger significant improvement in overall performances. Well, let's look at that from two different angles. First of all, if a player wants to leave and he also happens to be your most expensive sort of weekly player, your biggest name, he's got, 200 million followers on Instagram, 300 million, more than most countries have in population. If he's the one that's causing the upset, if he's the one that wants to leave, that has huge ramifications on the rest of the squad. It can't not. It was only a few months ago people were talking about giving Ronaldo the captain's armband because he came in and unsettled, or shone a light on, maybe is a better term, the sort of weaknesses and the lack of pedigree that Harry Maguire has. And then now we're talking about him doing something which is incredibly unprofessional, which is basically throwing your toys out the pram until you get a move. The interesting thing with this for me is, all summer when Ten Hag's been saying he wants to stay, or we want him to stay, he will stay, it's almost like the reason why you let players leave when they want to leave isn't because, you couldn't financially and contractually sort of put your foot down and say, no, you're staying. Of course, United could always do that. The reason you let them go is because of the negative effects that this sort of thing has on the team's performances. When you've got your main striker saying he wants to leave every 2 minutes, that will have a negative effect on the team. So we almost should have seen this coming, really, shouldn't we? When the biggest player in the squad, the biggest player in the world, is saying he wants to go, that is going to have negative effects, negative connotations for the rest of the squad, and therefore the performances of the team. It almost feels a little bit short-sighted to think, actually, now we've started losing, it probably does matter that our main player wants to leave. We should have known that this was a problem. That's why you let players go when they want to go, because it has negative effects for the rest of the season. So it's interesting to me that we've finally decided, actually, yeah, it probably is an issue, isn't it, that Ronaldo is basically going around Europe trying to offer himself to every club that will have him. That's the only question that remains, is who will have him? I think this might be one of those that comes down to the end of the window where we sign a replacement or we sign an option up front, which we'll come to in a minute, and by the end of the window, Ronaldo's standards of which club he wants to join and how much he needs to be paid to join them drops and drops and drops, and we may see him go somewhere like Sporting Lisbon for a massive pay cut. But it just seems like we knew that this was going to cause problems, and then now we're almost surprised that the biggest player in the squad, hating it here is causing problems for other people. That seems pretty straightforward maths to me. We've seen that so many times in football. If someone's disgruntled, if someone wants to go, you kind of have to let them go, and not because of a sort of player power thing, but because it sets a horrible precedent in the dressing room. For me, there's no surprise there. Let's move on to someone then who may well be his replacement this window, and that is Matthias Cunha from Atletico Madrid. This one just came out of absolutely nowhere last night. Not one word that I'd seen anywhere of Manchester United linked to Matthias Cunha, and then all of a sudden, last night, we saw TalkSport, TalkSport sources have weirdly become quite reliable in the last 12 months. The journalists and the presenters on TalkSport, Simon Jordan, Gabby Agbonlahor, they aren't reliable. So if it's been said on TalkSport, that doesn't mean it's reliable. But TalkSport sources have become much more reliable in the last 12 months. They came out last night saying Manchester United are close to signing Matthias Cunha from Atletico Madrid. The fee is around 50 million euros. TalkSport sources understand. That was then sort of backed up and kind of tempered slightly by Fabrizio Romano, who said Man United had direct talks with Cunha's agent, so did, as with many others in the last few days, no agreement reached with Atletico as things stand, and Atletico want more than 50 million this summer. So there's almost a head-to-head going on here between TalkSport sources and Fabrizio Romano. Obviously, Romano has a longer track record of being reliable than TalkSport do, because they've been, largely laughable in the past. But again, there has been a shift, and I think this was reported. I saw, online that apparently a lot of the journalists and people who used to work for Sky Sports News behind the scenes have gone to TalkSport in recent years, or a few of them have, and they've taken a lot of their sources and their contacts with them, obviously, because that's what that's what happens. Which is apparently that's where this kind of uplifting credibility for TalkSport has come from, and maybe it's sort of a downgrade in Sky Sports credibility as well. But yeah, contact is confirmed. United's interest is confirmed. Now, he's someone that, on the face of it, Matthias Cunha, isn't massively statistically exciting. So if we look at his stats for last season, his goal stats, he's not someone that ever really in his career has been prolific. So the most goals he's ever got in a single season is 8, as far as I can see here. Now, that's shit. Do you know what I mean? If we're honest, 8 goals in a season for a striker is crap, isn't it? There's no two ways about that. I think Scott McTominay got 7 goals last season, right? So he's not prolific. However, in my general trend of toxic positivity, as it's been dubbed in recent weeks, he has got some standout stats. Obviously, goal scoring isn't one of them, but his off-the-ball work is absolutely elite. In terms of pressures, tackles, interceptions, and blocks for a forward, he's in the 90th percentile or above for all of them. In terms of his assists, his expected assists, his non-penalty expected goals, he is in the 90th percentile for all of them. He's a good finisher. He's someone that has struggled to hold down a starting place at Atletico Madrid, which means that his appearances to goals ratio is poor, but his minutes to goals ratio is actually quite good. So I think he's someone that it takes a bit more digging than just, the most goals you've ever scored in a season is 8, and that was for Hertha Berlin 2 years ago. That's crap, which it is. He's someone that may well fit into a system. And again, I was saying this yesterday, I don't know if it was on the podcast or on the Transfers Live, but there is a bit of a lack of top goal-scoring strikers around Europe between the ages of about 22 and 30. You've got your sort of Harry Kanes, and then kind of that old guard of Zlatan and Suarez and Ronaldo and Cavani and all them lot. And then it's basically no one in their 20s is scoring goal after goal after goal. And then you've got Haaland and Mbappe. And there's a weird gap in there, because a lot of the players who are sort of reaching their prime now or in their mid-20s are playing in systems that are almost more modern than you've got a big striker up front. You look at Liverpool, Firmino, I know he scored more goals than 8, but he's a player that has won trophies having scored very few goals in seasons. You look at A lot of the teams around Europe, even Barcelona, Man City as well, their top goal scorer last season was Riyad Mahrez, who wasn't even guaranteed to start for them, let alone a sort of traditional number 9. It's all about players who fit in systems. And Ronaldo, yes, you're almost guaranteed 20 goals a season with a minimum. We finished 6th last season. And that's not all Ronaldo's fault. But what I'm saying is a striker that scores you loads of goals doesn't guarantee trophies. It guarantees goals. And goals, for one player isn't the sort of the modern way to win trophies and to win games. It's spreading goals around systems. Because like Raheem Sterling is not a goal scorer, is an awful finisher. He got 30 goals for City 2 years ago because he's in the right place at the right time as dictated by the manager. And that's what, I think that's why you see the likes of Klopp and Pep having so much success, because they implement their system the best. It's not about having, a number 9 in the same way it was 10, 15 years ago. So someone like Matthias Cunha could do a decent job for Manchester United, and especially if it means you're getting rid of, Ronaldo, who doesn't want to be there. I think that's certainly an improvement on morale. Like, you look at Man United over the last 2 games. Brightford, we'll just put them both together. Brightford, right? Those Brightford games, we aren't worse than Brentford and Brighton. We finished above both of them last season. Our squad is undeniably better than both of them. The reason we lost those games is attitude and confidence. And if you have a team that has a better attitude and you start winning games, we are clearly better than we're playing at the minute, player for player. And there has to be a reason that these players cannot perform. The only difference that I've seen since pre-season and now is the fact that Ronaldo's starting and the fact that he's thrown his toys out the pram. Again, I hate to blame it all on one player because he was one of the few players that put in decent performances last season. But if your main man is sulking and wants to leave, he's got to leave. I think it's as simple as that, really. Let's get into some of these comments then. Chaitanya says, it's good for the club if Ronaldo leaves. I know he has the mentality and high standards and all. If this is what he wanted, why wait for so long and create such a circus? Yeah, exactly. I don't quite understand that. And again, this thing about professionalism and high standards, he's got high standards on the training ground and on the pitch, but off the field, trying to sell yourself around Europe isn't professionalism. He's very unprofessional in that regard. Like, fair enough, he gets in an ice bath after the game and takes a few free kicks after training. Obviously, physically, he has held himself to the highest standards for 20 years. There's no denying that. But in terms of what is professionalism, that is how you get on with your profession. He's been incredibly unprofessional this summer. I don't think anyone can deny that. So, yes, he's got high standards in some ways, but in other ways, he's spitting his dummy out and doing something that no one else in the squad is doing, which is forcing a move by being unprofessional. So, I think blanket word professionalism can't really apply to him at the moment. Ronaldo needs to go and get a younger player. Glazer enablers whinging. The irony, is that about me or is that about other people? I don't know who you'd call in a Glazer enabler there. I don't really know what it means because they bought the club with a fucking leveraged debt buyout. It was hardly enabled, was it? It was enabled by banks. Anyway, let's move on, shall we? Next up then, we've got a little update on Frenkie de Jong. For those who didn't see it, there was an update yesterday from Marcel van der Kraan that he's heard from very strong sources that Manchester United's offer for Frenkie de Jong has expired, which I don't really know what that means. New negotiations will have to begin. They'll make a new construction to fulfill the economic wishes of the player. I don't really understand what that means because the economic wishes of the player, as far as I was aware, we hadn't agreed personal terms with Frenkie de Jong. That was the whole problem. So I don't think that deal was ever done. The deal that we had supposedly got completed was the deal between United and Barcelona, not United and de Jong. So they'll have to make a new construction to fulfill the economic wishes of the player. What does that mean? Unless they're saying we need to make a new deal where we pay his wages to Barcelona and they give them to him. I don't quite understand how that is linked to all the news we've been hearing all summer, which is United and Barca have got this deal, United and de Jong don't. Now we're sort of saying that this new deal has to appease de Jong when we never had a deal that did that in the first place. I don't quite understand it. Apparently, there were also rumours and reports yesterday that United were surprised by this news that the deal had expired, whatever that means. It's not something you hear of very often, is it? Usually once a deal is agreed, that lasts until the window ends, whether the deal happens or not. You don't usually hear of, it's been 2 weeks now. That deal had a timer on it. In case you didn't know, that deal had a little timer on it. It was in a briefcase. We made the deal, we printed it off, we put it in a briefcase, and then the briefcase had a timer on, and then it automatically shredded after 2 weeks. So we're going to have to do a new deal. When's that been a thing since? Never heard of that. Anyway, that apparently United's deal with Jong, which seemingly never existed in the first place, has now expired. So whatever that means. And finally, Ronaldo and Fernandez call for transfers. According to TalkSport, disgruntled United players, including Ronaldo and Bruno Fernandes, have appealed to the board to back Erik ten Hag in the transfer market. I don't quite know how that works. Maybe they've gone to Richard Arnold. Maybe they've gone to John Murtagh. I'm not quite sure. But apparently, Fernandes and Ronaldo have gone and said, we need to make some transfers. And they went, you can leave, to Cristiano Ronaldo. And to be honest, that's probably what he wanted, isn't it? I wonder with this whether this is true, because you think, well, why would Ronaldo care if he's trying to leave? But then maybe he thinks, well, if I do have to stay here, which is a possibility even now, because there aren't that many people in for him. If I do have to stay, I want to be surrounded by the best players possible. And again, I think this is a good thing. If this is true, who knows? You hear these stories all the time, don't you? Top players urge this and that, and you think, well, if it is true, good. Because they obviously realise that the squad isn't good enough. They obviously realise not just is the squad not good enough, politically how bad it looks when you get a new manager and don't back him. You get a new manager in, he wants new transfers, and you spend less than all of the teams around you and less than half of the teams in the bottom half of the Premier League. That is terrible politically. It sets the manager and the team up on such a bad footing that I can see why players would say, even if it means I might get replaced, this club needs to improve and you need to back this manager. And currently, you're not doing that. Callum Imrie says the players weren't asking for signings when Ralph said we need 10 new players. Yeah, because that would mean they'd all go. That's why. When you think we might get one more, it's probably, Bruno goes in there thinking, right, if we get one more signing, it's probably a striker or a CDM. I'm probably safe here. Ronaldo comes in going, we need a new signing to replace me. And all the other players that are in there, they haven't been named, have they? So I think everyone sort of thinks, I'm not the problem at the club, it's someone else, which you kind of see that on the pitch, don't you? No one thinks it's their fault. It's always someone else's fault. But yeah, the feel-good factor that we had around the summer at Manchester United has vanished in 2 games, which I think is a record speed for Manchester United to be in crisis in a new season. But, it's nice to live in record-breaking times, isn't it, I suppose? Right, that's going to be all from me. We'll be back this afternoon for a Transfers Live with me and Stephen Howson. So we'll be going through all the latest news that comes out in the afternoon. So make sure you check that out. We've also got an interview with Henry Winter going through the current situation with the Glazers and just how that is affecting things. Jay and Ronaldo did that one for the Tier 1 Transfer Podcast. So make sure you check that out later as well. Loads coming up. And if you haven't already, hit subscribe. We're live every time there's breaking news all through the year. We're live with watch-alongs, podcasts, every bit of Manchester United news and coverage you could ever want is right here on Stretford Paddock. So hit subscribe and hit the notification bell as well to see our videos and our breaking news first. Thanks for watching.